In a world obsessed with wealth, where success is measured by bank accounts and material possessions, where the pursuit of money consumes our waking hours and haunts our sleepless nights, there exists an ancient wisdom that offers a radically different path to financial freedom. A path that doesn't require you to become a millionaire. A path that doesn't demand you sacrifice your peace for profit. A path discovered over 2,500 years ago by a prince who had everything and gave it all away to find true liberation. Welcome. Today, we're exploring one of the most misunderstood teachings in Buddhist philosophy, the relationship between non-attachment and financial freedom. And I must warn you, what you're about to discover will challenge everything modern society has taught you about money, success, and what it truly means to be financially free. This isn't about becoming poor. It's not about rejecting wealth or living in deprivation. This is about something far more profound. This is about breaking the invisible chains that bind you to money, so that money can finally serve you instead of you serving it. Let's begin. The paradox. Before we dive deep into Buddhist teachings, we must first understand a fundamental paradox that most people never recognize. They spend their entire lives chasing financial freedom, yet the very act of chasing keeps them enslaved. Think about it. How many people do you know who say, "Once I have X amount of money, then I'll be free. Once I pay off my debts, once I buy that house, once I reach that salary, once my investments hit a certain number, then I'll finally be able to relax. Then I'll be free." But here's what actually happens. The goal is reached, and immediately, a new goal appears. The debt is paid, but now there's the mortgage. The house is bought, but now it needs renovating. The salary increases, but so do the expenses. The investment target is hit, but now there's fear of losing it. This is what Buddha called tanha, the thirst that can never be quenched. You see, most people believe financial freedom means having enough money that you never have to worry about it again. But Buddhism reveals a shocking truth. As long as your peace depends on having money, you will never have enough. Because the problem isn't the amount. The problem is the attachment. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. There was once a businessman who worked 70 hours a week for 20 years. His goal was simple: make $10 million, retire early, and finally enjoy life. After 2 decades of sacrifice, of missing his children's childhoods, of stress-induced health problems, of relationships deteriorating, he finally reached his goal: $10 million. He retired. He should have been free, but within 6 months, he was more anxious than ever. Why? Because now he spent every day checking the stock market, worrying about his investments, calculating whether his money would last, fearing economic collapse, obsessing over portfolio performance. He had achieved financial independence, but he was further from freedom than ever before. This is the paradox. True financial freedom is not about having money. It's about money having no power over you. And that's where Buddhist non-attachment comes in. But before we explore what non-attachment truly means, we must first understand what it does not mean, because this is where most people get confused and dismiss Buddhist wisdom as impractical or naive. The great misunderstanding. When most people hear Buddhist non-attachment to money, they immediately think it means Buddhists believe money is evil. Buddhists want you to be poor. Buddhists think you should give away everything. Buddhists reject material comfort. None of these are true. Let me be crystal clear. Buddhism does not teach that money is bad. It teaches that attachment to money causes suffering. There's a profound difference. Money itself is neutral. It's a tool. Like a knife, it can be used to heal or to harm. The knife isn't the problem. How you relate to the knife determines everything. The Buddha himself accepted gifts of gold from wealthy supporters. Monasteries owned property. Buddhist communities engaged in commerce. The issue was never money. The issue was always the internal relationship to money. Let me illustrate with a simple question. Can you enjoy having money without needing it for your happiness? Can you use money as a tool without it becoming your master? Can you lose money without losing yourself? This is the essence of non-attachment. Non-attachment means you can hold something lightly. You can appreciate it while you have it. You can use it skillfully, but your well-being doesn't depend on keeping it. Think of it like this. Imagine holding a bird in your hands. If you hold too tightly, if you're attached, you'll crush it. The very thing you're trying to keep, you destroy. If you reject it entirely, if you throw it away in aversion, you lose the joy it could bring. But if you hold it gently, with open palms, it can rest with you. It can bring beauty to your life. And if it flies away, you can let it go without suffering. This is how Buddhism teaches us to hold money, not with grasping, not with rejection, but with wisdom. The wealthy person who is attached suffers constantly, worried about losing what they have, always wanting more, never satisfied. Their identity wrapped up in their net worth. The poor person who is attached suffers constantly, bitter about what they lack, envious of others, their self-worth tied to their financial status. But the person who practices non-attachment, they can be wealthy or poor, and their inner peace remains undisturbed. This is financial freedom, not a number in a bank account, not a portfolio balance, but an internal state of liberation where money cannot control you. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds nice in theory, but how does this actually work in practice? I have bills to pay. I have responsibilities. I can't just not care about money. And you're right to ask. Because true Buddhist teaching is always practical. It's not about escaping reality. It's about engaging with reality more skillfully. So let's explore exactly how non-attachment transforms your actual financial life. The psychological prison of financial attachment. To understand how non-attachment creates freedom, we must first understand the prison that attachment creates. When you're attached to money, it's not just about the money itself. It's about what you believe money will give you: security, identity, worth, power, respect, love, happiness. Buddhism teaches that this is a fundamental delusion, and it's this delusion that creates suffering. Let me break down the specific ways financial attachment imprisons you. First, the prison of never enough. When you're attached, your happiness is always conditional. You think, I'll be happy when I have X amount. But psychological research confirms what Buddha taught. The hedonic treadmill is real. You get the raise. You feel happy for a few weeks. Then it becomes your new normal. Now you need the next raise to feel that happiness again. You buy the house. It's exciting at first. Then it's just your house, and you start thinking about a bigger house. This is called the arrival fallacy in modern psychology, but Buddha identified it 25 centuries ago. As long as your contentment depends on external conditions, you will never be content, because external conditions are always changing. Non-attachment doesn't mean you can't enjoy having more money. It means your happiness doesn't depend on it. Second, the prison of constant fear. Attachment breeds fear, always. If your peace depends on having money, then losing money becomes your greatest fear. And here's the cruel irony. The more money you have, the more you have to lose. So the fear often increases with wealth. The person with $1 million fears losing it. The person with 10 million fears losing it even more. The person with 100 million lives in even greater anxiety. Why? Because their entire identity, their entire sense of security is tied to that number. This is why you see billionaires who still can't stop working, who still make ruthless decisions to acquire more, who sacrifice relationships and health and peace. For what? They already have more than they could ever spend. But they're not free. They're enslaved by attachment. Non-attachment dissolves this fear, not by getting rid of money, but by getting rid of the belief that money is what keeps you safe. Third, the prison of identity. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of financial attachment is how it becomes who you think you are. I'm successful because I make 6 figures. I'm a failure because I'm in debt. I'm worthy because I can afford luxury. I'm inadequate because I drive an old car. Your self-worth becomes entangled with your net worth. And here's the problem. If who you are is determined by how much you have, then you're not really a person anymore. You're just a number. And numbers constantly fluctuate. Economic downturn? You lose yourself. Investment fails? You lose yourself. Business collapses? You lose yourself. This is not freedom. This is the most profound form of slavery. Buddhism teaches, you are not your bank account. You are not your salary. You are not your possessions. You are the awareness that witnesses all of these things. And that awareness cannot be increased or decreased by any external circumstance. When you realize this, truly realize this at a deep level, financial ups and downs still happen, but they no longer touch your core being. Fourth, the prison of comparison. Financial attachment keeps you constantly measuring yourself against others. He makes more than me. She has a bigger house. They can afford vacations. I can't. My net worth is less than my peers. This is called upward social comparison, and it's one of the most reliable predictors of unhappiness. Here's why. There will always be someone with more. Always. If you make $50,000, you compare yourself to those making $100,000. If you make $100,000, you compare yourself to those making $500,000. If you make $1 million, you compare yourself to those making $10 million. The game never ends. It's unwinnable. Non-attachment breaks this cycle completely. When your worth isn't tied to financial status, comparison loses its power. You can genuinely celebrate others' success without feeling diminished. You can acknowledge your own financial situation without shame or pride. You can focus on what truly matters to you, rather than trying to keep up with some imaginary standard. Fifth, the prison of delayed living. This might be the most tragic consequence of financial attachment. People spend their best years, their health, their energy, their presence with loved ones, sacrificing everything for a future financial goal. I'll spend time with my kids once I make partner. I'll pursue my passion once I'm financially secure. I'll travel once I retire. I'll be happy once I have enough. But Buddhism asks a crucial question. What if you die before you get there? What if you sacrifice 30 years of your life for a retirement you never reach? What if you trade your present moment, the only moment you actually have, for a future that may never come? Non-attachment allows you to engage fully with life now, not recklessly, not irresponsibly, but with presence. You can work toward financial goals without being enslaved by them. You can build wealth without it being the center of your existence. You can plan for the future without sacrificing the present. This is the freedom that attachment steals from you. Now, understanding these prisons is important, but understanding alone doesn't open the door. We need practical wisdom. We need specific practices. So let's explore how Buddhist non-attachment actually transforms your relationship with money in concrete, practical ways. The practice of non-attachment with money. Buddhist non-attachment isn't a belief you adopt. It's a practice you cultivate. It's not something you achieve once and you're done. It's a continuous process of loosening the grip, of relating differently, of seeing clearly. Let me share 7 specific practices that transform your relationship with money. Practice 1. Mindful awareness of financial emotions. Buddhism always starts with awareness. Before you can change something, you must see it clearly. Most people have no idea how much emotional charge money carries for them. It operates unconsciously, driving behavior without their awareness. The practice is simple but profound. Start noticing your emotional reactions to money. When you check your bank balance, what do you feel? Anxiety? Relief? Pride? Shame? When you see someone driving an expensive car, what arises? Envy? Judgment? Indifference? When you spend money, what's the quality of mind? Guilt? Freedom? Worry? Excitement? When someone talks about their salary or success, how do you respond internally? Don't try to change these reactions. Just notice them. Watch them like you're observing weather pattern. This practice reveals the invisible chains, and awareness itself begins to loosen them. Over time, you'll notice patterns. I always feel anxious when I spend money, even on necessities. I feel superior when I see someone with less. My mood changes based on my investment portfolio. I avoid looking at bills because of the fear they trigger. These observations are gold. They show you exactly where attachment lives. Practice 2. Investigating the source of security. Here's a powerful Buddhist contemplation. Ask yourself, what makes me truly secure? Most people immediately think money, savings, property, insurance, investments. But then investigate deeper. How much money would you need to feel completely secure? Whatever number you come up with, ask, if I had that amount and it was guaranteed never to go away, would I be completely free of fear? Be honest, you'd still fear illness, death, loss of loved ones, meaninglessness, aging, accidents. Money cannot protect you from the fundamental uncertainties of existence. This isn't pessimistic, it's liberating. Because when you realize that money cannot give you the ultimate security you're seeking, you stop demanding that it does. And paradoxically, this makes you more financially responsible, not less. Why? Because you're no longer acting from fear, you're acting from clarity. Practice 3. Experiencing sufficiency. One of the most powerful Buddhist practices is learning to recognize enough, not deprivation, not poverty, but genuine sufficiency. Try this exercise. For 1 week, at the end of each day, reflect on this question. Did I have enough today? Enough food? Yes. Enough shelter? Yes. Enough clothing? Yes. Enough safety? Yes. This doesn't mean you can't want more or work toward more, but it breaks the spell of constant scarcity thinking. Most people in developed countries have enough, but they never feel it. Their mind is always focused on what's lacking. The practice of recognizing sufficiency rewires this pattern. You begin to notice, I actually have enough food in my refrigerator for several days. I actually have more clothes than I wear. I actually have shelter and safety that billions of people lack. This isn't about guilt. It's about accuracy, about seeing what's actually true. And when you can recognize sufficiency, attachment naturally loosens, because the desperate grasping comes from believing you don't have enough. Practice 4. Generosity as a practice. Buddhism teaches that generosity is the antidote to attachment. When you give freely, you're literally practicing letting go. You're training yourself to hold money lightly. Start small. It doesn't matter if it's $5 or $5,000. What matters is the quality of the giving. Give without expecting anything in return. Give without needing recognition. Give to practice the feeling of releasing. Notice what arises when you give money away. Does part of you resist? Does it feel scary? Does it feel liberating? This practice doesn't make you poor. Ironically, many people find that as they become more generous, they worry less about money, and their financial situation often improves. Why? Because generosity dissolves the scarcity mindset. It tells your deeper psyche, there's enough. I can give. I'm not in survival mode. This creates a completely different relationship with earning, spending, and saving. Practice 5. Examining financial decisions with awareness. Before any significant financial decision, pause and ask yourself, am I making this choice from fear or from freedom? Am I trying to fill an emotional hole with a purchase? Am I seeking status or genuine value? Is this aligned with what truly matters to me? Buddhism doesn't tell you what to buy or not buy. It teaches you to make choices consciously rather than compulsively. The person practicing non-attachment might buy the expensive item, any idea, but they do it with full awareness, knowing exactly why they're choosing it. without the illusion that it will make them complete, or they might not buy it, not from deprivation, but from genuine lack of need. Either way, the decision comes from clarity rather than attachment. Practice 6. Practicing impermanence with finances. Buddhist philosophy centers on impermanence. The reality that all the Buddhists decide is, things change. Your financial situation is impermanent. No matter what it is now, it will change. This isn't pessimistic, it's realistic, and it's liberating. If you're struggling financially now, this too will pass. If you're wealthy now, this too will change. Contemplating impermanence doesn't mean you don't plan or save. It means you don't cling to any financial state as permanent. Practice this. Regularly remind yourself that everything in your financial life is temporary. Your salary could change. Your investments will fluctuate. Your expenses will vary. Your needs will evolve. When you deeply accept impermanence, you stop trying to freeze your financial situation in place. You become more fluid, more adaptable, more resilient. Practice 7. Separating self-worth from net worth. This is perhaps the most important practice of all. Daily, remind yourself, I am not my bank account. My value as a human being is not determined by my financial status. This sounds simple, but it goes against decades of social conditioning. The practice is to notice every time you conflate the two. I'm successful because I got the promotion. I'm failing because I'm in debt. I'm important because I can afford this. Catch these thoughts, not to judge them, but to see them clearly, then consciously separate them. I have debt, and I am a person of inherent worth. I have wealth, and I am a person of inherent worth. I have financial struggles, and I am a person of inherent worth. The financial situation is a temporary condition. Your fundamental being is untouched by it. When you practice this consistently, something remarkable happens. You start making better financial decisions. Why? Because you're no longer trying to prove anything. You're not spending to feel worthy. You're not hoarding to feel secure. You're not comparing to feel superior. You're simply engaging with money as a practical tool, freed from the emotional distortions that attachment creates. The financial benefits of non-attachment. Now, here's where things get really interesting. When you practice non-attachment with money, something unexpected happens. Your actual financial situation often improves dramatically. This seems paradoxical. How can caring less about money lead to having more of it? Let me explain the mechanics of this. Benefit 1. You make better decisions. Attachment clouds judgment. Fear distorts perception. When you're attached, you make decisions from scarcity, desperation, or ego. These are terrible foundations for financial choices. The person attached to money might stay in a soul-crushing job because they're afraid of losing security, make impulsive purchases to fill emotional voids, avoid necessary risks because fear of loss paralyzes them, chase get-rich-quick schemes out of desperation, miss opportunities because they're too focused on protecting what they have. The person practicing non-attachment makes decisions from clarity. They can leave the wrong job because their security isn't dependent on it. They spend intentionally, aligned with genuine values. They can take calculated risks because fear doesn't paralyze them. They have patience, so they avoid desperation-driven mistakes. They see opportunities clearly because they're not blinded by fear or greed. Better decisions, over time, lead to better outcomes. Benefit 2. Your more creative and productive research shows that financial stress impairs cognitive function. When you're worried about money, your brain literally has less capacity for creative problem solving. It's like running a computer with too many programs open. Everything slows down. Non-attachment frees up enormous mental and emotional energy. Instead of spending hours worrying about your portfolio, checking your bank balance compulsively, comparing yourself to others, or lying awake anxious about bills, you can direct that energy toward productive creation. Many of history's most successful people, from artists to entrepreneurs, practiced some form of non-attachment. They were able to take creative risks because their identity wasn't tied to financial outcomes. They could persist through failures because setbacks didn't destroy their self-worth. They could see opportunities others missed because they weren't operating from desperation. Benefit 3. You build genuine value. When you're attached to money, you're always asking, how can I get more money? When you practice non-attachment, you ask, how can I create genuine value? This shift is subtle but profound. The first question leads to manipulation, shortcuts, exploitation, anything to get the money. The second question leads to service, quality, integrity, creating something actually worth exchanging. And in the long run, creating genuine value is far more financially rewarding than chasing money directly. Think about it. The most financially successful people are often those who became obsessed with solving a problem, creating beauty, or serving a need, not those who were obsessed with getting rich. Steve Jobs was obsessed with creating beautiful, functional products. Warren Buffett is obsessed with understanding business value. Artists create authentic work, and the money follows, or doesn't, but their creative output remains fulfilling. Non-attachment allows you to focus on the value creation rather than the compensation, and, ironically, this often leads to greater compensation. Benefit 4. You develop resilience. Financial life includes ups and downs. This is inevitable. The attached person is devastated by downturns. They lose everything, not just money, but confidence, identity, peace. The non-attached person remains stable through fluctuations. Money comes, money goes, but their core remains undisturbed. This resilience is itself a massive financial advantage. When a financial setback occurs, and it will, the non-attached person can think clearly about solutions, take action without panic, learn from the experience, rebuild without emotional devastation. The attached person might spiral into depression, make desperate decisions, or give up entirely. Over a lifetime, resilience is worth more than any single financial gain. Benefit 5. You attract better opportunities. Here's something subtle but real. People can sense desperation. When you're attached and desperate for money, it shows in your energy, your decisions, your interactions, and people generally don't want to do business with desperate people. It feels uncomfortable. It triggers caution. But when you practice non-attachment, when you're genuinely okay regardless of outcome, people sense that too. It reads as confidence, stability, integrity. You can walk away from bad deals because you don't need them. You can negotiate from strength because your well-being doesn't depend on the outcome. You can focus on mutual benefit rather than extraction. This attracts better partnerships, better opportunities, better terms. It's not magic, it's psychology, and it has real financial consequences. Benefit 6. You optimize for long-term. Wealth attachment creates short-term thinking. Fear and greed both push for immediate results. Non-attachment allows long-term thinking. You can invest wisely for decades without constant interference. You can build skills slowly without frustration. You can grow a business steadily without desperate pivots. You can compound your efforts over years without burning out. Warren Buffett's famous quote comes to mind. The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. Non-attachment cultivates patience, and patience, in financial matters, is often the difference between struggle and abundance. Benefit 7. You spend wisely. Perhaps most practically, non-attachment dramatically improves your spending patterns. You're not trying to fill emotional voids with purchases. You're not buying to impress anyone. You're not spending to prove your worth. You're not accumulating to feel secure. You simply buy what genuinely serves your life. This might sound boring, but it's liberating and financially powerful. The average person wastes enormous amounts of money on purchases driven by attachment. The wardrobe full of clothes they don't wear, the gym membership they don't use, the car that's beyond their means, the house that's bigger than they need, the gadgets collecting dust, all purchased to fill some emotional need that purchases can't actually fill. Non-attachment doesn't make you cheap. It makes you intentional. You might spend more on some things you genuinely value, and dramatically less on things you bought from attachment. The result? You need less money to be satisfied, which means true financial freedom comes much sooner. The deepest level. Beyond financial freedom, we've explored how Buddhist non-attachment transforms your relationship with money, how it frees you from the prison of attachment, how it often improves your actual financial situation. But now we must go deeper. Because the ultimate teaching of Buddhism isn't about having a better relationship with money. It's about realizing that true freedom transcends the entire financial dimension. Let me explain. The illusion of financial freedom. Our entire premise started with financial freedom. But what does this actually mean? For most people, it means having enough money that I never have to worry about money again. But Buddhism points to something radical. As long as you believe freedom comes from any external condition, including money, you're not truly free. Why? Because that condition can change. And if your freedom depends on conditions, then you're conditionally free, which means you're not really free at all. Think about it. You achieve financial freedom. You have your millions, your passive income, your security. But now, You still age, you still get sick, you still face death. Your loved ones still suffer, the world still contains injustice, your mind still generates dissatisfaction, so are you. Truly free? Buddhism doesn't dismiss financial stability. It simply recognizes that financial stability alone cannot give you the freedom you're ultimately seeking, the freedom that cannot be taken. The Buddha taught about a freedom that doesn't depend on any external circumstance, not money, not health, not relationships, not security. A freedom that exists even in the midst of financial hardship, a freedom that remains even when everything is taken away. This sounds impossible to the modern mind, but it's the deepest truth Buddhism offers. What is this freedom? It's the freedom of non-clinging itself. When you cling to nothing, not even to non-clinging, you cannot be bound. The wealthy person who doesn't cling to wealth is free. The poor person who doesn't cling to poverty is free. The person in between who doesn't cling to any financial state is free. This is not about your bank account. It's about your state of consciousness. The practice of ultimate non-attachment. So how do you access this deeper freedom? Not by achieving financial independence first, not by waiting until conditions are perfect, but by recognizing, right now, that your fundamental nature is already free. You are not your financial situation. You are the awareness that observes your financial situation, and that awareness cannot be increased by gain or decreased by loss. Try this right now. Notice that you are aware of reading these words. Notice that you are aware of any concerns about money. Notice that you are aware of any desires for financial freedom. That awareness, the one noticing all of this, is it worried about money, the awareness itself, or is it the thoughts and feelings that arise within awareness? This distinction seems subtle, but it's everything. Your thoughts can be anxious about money. Your feelings can be stressed about finances. Your body can be tense with financial worry, but the awareness that notices all of this, is it ever actually touched by these states? Or is it more like the sky, which remains unchanged whether there are storm clouds or clear blue? This is what Buddhism means by your true nature. And when you recognize this, not intellectually, but experientially, you access a freedom that doesn't depend on financial conditions. Living from freedom. This doesn't mean you abandon financial responsibility. Quite the opposite. When you're no longer enslaved by financial attachment, you engage with money more skillfully. You save not from fear, but from wisdom. You spend not from compulsion, but from choice. You earn not from desperation, but from contribution. You give not from guilt, but from abundance. Every financial action becomes an expression of freedom rather than an attempt to achieve it. This is the ultimate paradox. You stop seeking financial freedom and discover you're already free. The integration. So where does this leave us? Should you pursue financial stability? Yes, absolutely. Should you be responsible with money? Of course. Should you plan and save and invest? Certainly. But do all of this from freedom, not for freedom. Do it from a place that already recognizes, I am fundamentally okay, regardless of my financial situation. This isn't naive. It's the deepest wisdom, because when you know you're fundamentally okay, you can engage with the practical world without being consumed by it. You can work toward financial goals without being enslaved by them. You can enjoy abundance without being attached to it. You can face scarcity without being destroyed by it. The real treasure. There's an old Buddhist story I want to leave you with. A man spent his entire life searching for a legendary treasure said to bring ultimate freedom. He traveled the world. He studied ancient maps. He endured hardship and danger. Finally, after decades of searching, he found the location. He dug. He discovered the chest. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a mirror, and as he looked at his reflection, he understood. The freedom he'd been seeking was never somewhere else. It was never in any external thing. It was his own true nature, which had been there all along. Financial freedom through Buddhist non-attachment isn't about achieving a specific financial state. It's about recognizing that the freedom you seek cannot be found in any state, financial or otherwise. It's about discovering that you are already, in your deepest essence, free. And from that recognition, engaging with money and all of life in a completely transformed way. So let's come full circle. We started with the question, how can Buddhist non-attachment create financial freedom? And we've discovered that the answer operates on multiple levels. On the practical level, non-attachment improves your financial decisions, reduces wasteful spending, increases creativity and productivity, and builds long-term wealth. On the psychological level, Non-attachment frees you from the constant fear, comparison, and never enough mentality that attachment creates. On the spiritual level, non-attachment reveals that true freedom was never about money at all. It's about recognizing your inherent, unshakable nature that no financial circumstance can touch. This teaching doesn't ask you to reject money or live in deprivation. It asks something far more challenging: to hold money lightly, to use it wisely, to let your well-being be independent of it. Can you work toward financial stability without making it the foundation of your peace? Can you enjoy abundance without clinging to it? Can you face scarcity without losing yourself? This is the practice. Not something you perfect, but something you engage with daily. And as you practice, something remarkable happens. Money becomes what it always was: a tool. Not your master, not your identity, not your source of worth or security, just a tool that you use skillfully, hold lightly, and release easily. And in that release, you discover something that no amount of money can buy: true freedom. The freedom that exists right now, in this moment, regardless of your bank balance. The freedom that cannot be given or taken away. The freedom that is your birthright as a conscious being. This is the gift of Buddhist wisdom on money. Not to make you rich, though it might. Not to make you poor, though it might not. But to make you free. Truly, deeply, unshakably free. And from that freedom, to live and engage with money and all of life in a way that serves your highest good and the good of all beings. This is financial freedom through Buddhist non-attachment. May it serve your journey toward liberation